Okay, today we're going to dive into something really powerful. We're heading to Mozambique, where communities are literally living on the front lines of the struggle between people and wildlife. We're going to explore the incredibly complex and often hidden reality of this conflict, all through their own eyes.
Now, that sounds so simple, doesn't it? The elephants ate the crops. But for the women in these communities, who are the ones doing most of the farming, this is an absolute catastrophe. It means the food for their family is gone. It means all those hours of backbreaking labor gone in a single night.
And then you hear this, a completely different kind of disaster. This loss hits the men the hardest because their cattle are often the family's entire life savings, their economic status, everything. So you have two simple sentences, but they represent two very different sides of the exact same devastating conflict. So let's be really clear here. These are not just one-off incidents. This is the daily reality. It's a constant state of being on guard. And as we're about to see, the weight of this struggle, well, it's not shared equally at all. This is where you can really see how the conflict splits right down traditional gender lines. For women, who are the primary farmers, they bear the brunt of crop raiding by animals like elephants. For men, as the primary herders, they face total ruin when predators attack their cattle. It's the same conflict, but it's experienced in profoundly different ways. But the impact goes so much deeper than just the lost food or the lost animals. Let's look at the ripple effects, those hidden social and emotional costs that can truly shake an entire community to its core. You can see how this just spirals out of control. When the crops are gone, it's not just about hunger. It means kids get pulled out of school because they have to stand guard in the field all night. The immense economic pressure on men can tragically lead to a rise in domestic violence. And that constant fear, it can force people to leave their homes, creating this deep trauma from losing the lands their ancestors lived on. Just let that number sink in for a second. 2/3. Imagine 2/3 of your entire household's yearly income just gone, wiped out by predators. And this hits households led by women the absolute hardest, because they often face cultural barriers to taking certain protective measures. The vulnerability here is just staggering. But here's the thing. These communities are not passive victims. Not at all. They are actively fighting back, searching for solutions, and showing some incredible ingenuity and resilience in this struggle to coexist. And the spectrum of solutions they talked about is huge. It starts with pretty simple, low-tech stuff like making chili bricks that elephants absolutely hate the smell of. Then it moves to organized community patrols. From there, you get into bigger barriers like solar fencing, and all the way up to high-tech ideas like geofencing and collaring animals to get early warnings. And this, right here, is the crucial turning point. Because even the best-sounding solutions, well, they're not so simple. As this community started exploring all these options, they ran headfirst into some really difficult questions and deep disagreements that nobody saw coming. Okay, this is where the discussion got really interesting. We're about to walk through the most contentious debates that came up, the moments where well-meaning ideas clashed hard with the complex realities of everyday life. So the first major debate was all about fencing. I mean, on the surface, it seems like the most obvious solution, right? But the question they asked was, is a fence a protective shield that brings peace of mind, or is it actually a cage that creates a whole new set of problems? And the arguments on both sides are really powerful. Of course, proponents say fences give you a much-needed sense of control and protect your livelihood. But others worried about being boxed in, losing access to their land. They also pointed out that big centralized farms mean women have to walk farther to get to them, putting them in new danger. And maybe the biggest fear, if that one big fence is breached, the entire community could lose everything all at once. Next up on the debate floor, wildlife corridors. The idea is to create dedicated pathways for animals to move between protected areas. But are these corridors a real pathway to peace, or do they just create a new set of problems down the road?
So the real disagreement here comes down to the purpose of the corridor. One side argues that it helps people by stopping animals from spilling into villages. But the other side says, hold on, these corridors are really just for the animals' ecological needs, and they don't actually solve the conflict. They might just push the problem onto a new community further down the path.
All right, now for what was probably the most sensitive debate of them all. A lot of conservation projects, usually funded by outside donors, come with rules about gender inclusion, like quotas for women to be hired as rangers. But is this genuine empowerment, or is it an outside idea being forced onto the community?
This is such a fascinating tension. On the one hand, these initiatives are trying to fix real exclusion and give women economic power. But on the other hand, people in the community said these rules can feel like alien concepts that clash with their local traditions. For example, what an outsider might see as women being excluded from night patrols, the community might see as a way of protecting them. They worried these imposed rules could actually do more harm than good if they weren't designed with them.
So after all these intense conversations and deep disagreements, you might think the discussion just fell apart. But that's not what happened. Instead, something amazing happened. The community found powerful areas where everyone, and I mean everyone, agreed. Let's look at that common ground. Everyone came back to these core principles. First, there's no magic bullet, no one-size-fits-all solution. Second, the community has to own and lead this process. That's non-negotiable. They also agreed that relying just on farming is way too risky and that there has to be a real system for people to voice their complaints. And maybe most importantly, yes, being sensitive to gender is crucial, but it has to be co-designed with the community, not forced on them. And this really brings us to the ultimate takeaway from this entire conversation. The goal isn't just about saving animals. It's about finding a true equilibrium. Successful and ethical conservation cannot and should not be built on the suffering of the people who share that land. Their well-being isn't a side project. It's central to the entire effort. If there is one lesson, one phrase that echoed louder than anything else, it was this one. The solutions that actually work, the ones that last, are never the ones brought to a community. They are the ones developed with them. True partnership is the only way forward.
So we end with this question. It really forces us to think beyond simple fences or conservation plans. It asks us to think about the deep social, cultural, and human trade-offs that are involved. What are we willing to give, and what are we willing to ask of others in the name of truly sharing our planet?